welcome, everybody to MrSnidBitS and the Fry Guy. Say hi, Fry Guy.
Hello there.
All right. We are going to be doing movie reviews as well as other fun movie related things. As you can see, the movies that we're going to be reviewing are up in the top left hand corner of my screen, which is fantastic because they're three great movies, and I'm really, really excited to start talking about them as soon as you are, Mr. Fry Guy.
Sounds good to me. I just realized when we were going into this, like we didn't really discuss an intro, so
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kind of glad you
okay.
had something in
That's
your hat.
okay. I like to run wild. I run as best I can, however I can get it done, so it's perfect. Anyway, we are going to be talking about these different movies: Tenet, Evil Dead, the original 1981, as well as True Romance, the 1993 Tony Scott film, written by none other than Quentin Tarantino. But the first movie that we're going to cover is going to be Tenet because it is the newest movie, and we definitely want to make sure that we're covering something that's current and in the theater, or not in theaters, but at least right now during COVID, uh, released quickly onto live Voodoo or other services. So that'll be the movie, and Ed is actually the reason. Mr. Fry Guy, sorry. So I'm Eric or MrSnidBitS, and it's Ed or the Fry Guy. Uh, if you want to take the lead on this, because it is the movie you suggested to me, we'll do that. But I do want to put out the warning that we will be spoiling this film, and I'm going to continue to say that as we go. But there's a good chance that if you tune in during this, you are going to get a spoiler for these movies, because in order to review some of them, we need to really talk about it. So, Ed, go ahead.
Right. So first of all, how do you want to go into this thing? Because I remember the first time I seen the trailer for Tenet, I thought it was about an agent that just like died, and then he was doing like some afterlife shenanigans and whatnot. Because they kind of focused on that whole like pill part at the beginning before the even credits roll, and then the movie deals with a lot of time shenanigans. So what do you
Well,
think would be the best way to tackle?
that's a good question. And I think since this is our first night, we're going to definitely hit into these various things. But I say let's give our overall impression of the film and kind of how it left us feeling and kind of just what you remember from your first viewing. Because I know you've seen it multiple times. I'm still sitting on the fact that I watched it an hour ago. So it's really fresh in my mind. And so I have a lot of stuff, especially towards the end of the film, that's in my mind. Um,
Right.
so yeah, just tell me your overall impression of the film. Maybe compare it to other Chris Nolan films. If you are watching and you don't know, Chris Nolan directed Tenet, and he's also directed other known things like Inception, Interstellar, the Dark Knight series, and so on.
Okay, stacking up as a movie on its own, I really enjoyed it. I was a little bummed I didn't get to have the theater experience while watching this, but I think I benefited from being able to see this at home and slapping on the closed captions because I could tell like who was saying what and what plot points I could follow a lot easily because Christopher Nolan kind of has he does this weird thing with audio and sometimes like the score's really loud or there's a lot of stuff going on, you miss some little, snippets. Um,
Thank you.
and Yeah, I think honestly, if I looked at his whole portfolio, I think I like Tenet the most because it takes something from all the little things that he's done throughout, like ensemble pieces and like big like heists and interesting stories, and like he never does. I mean, you might find some of his movies boring in parts, but like he always has interesting concepts when he goes into them.
Okay,
And
so
I
let.
feel like this one, oh,
Oh
what
no, no, finish. I thought it sounded like you were in it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that like it has the best parts of like Dunkirk or Inception or the Batman movies, where like there's a good cast and a good story, but no one thing feels like it overpowers the other on the trip from the start to the finish. And it's one of the only ones I felt like, oh man, I gotta watch that right away as soon as I finished it.
So, and I know what you mean because I had that same, and this isn't a Nolan film, but when I walked out of the Matrix in 1999, I literally drove to another theater because it wasn't playing right away at the one I was at, just to go right back into the movie to see it again. Like, so I get that sensation and that need. Watching Tenet today, I definitely got the sensation that, man, I do need to watch this movie again. I didn't feel like I needed to do it now, but that could have been just circumstantial in my life. Um, But I do have to admit, the first half of the film, I thought, wow, is Chris Nolan going to make the same movies over and over again? Because it totally started to feel that way. And then in the second half of the film, gloriously, because, you know, if you know the film, that makes sense. Things turn completely around and go the other way. And I realized that this movie is not what I thought it would be and has a really great story. Like, forget about all the time stuff. It's a fun story. Like, I enjoyed the characters. So that's me. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, agree. It's funny too because like this film is somehow like a post-apocalyptic new code like Cold War thriller, but it doesn't feel like it has all the tropes other than the fact that like the bad guy is like a Russian billionaire with ties to an oil company or something like that. Like that's surface level stuff.
You mean the
But like you
Englishman
can watch.
playing the Russian?
Yes, exactly. That's the one. And yeah, like if you didn't even know that, like you could still have a really good time. But like if
Right.
you're a big fan of films from the era or like that kind of stuff, I feel like there's more. The more you are into Nolan-like films, the more you're gonna get out of this one. But I still feel like if you just went into it blind, not knowing any of these old setups or any of this, like
Go ahead.
what do they call it? Tropes,
Tropes. Yeah,
tropes. If
yeah.
you don't know a lot of tropes, you can have a lot of fun with this movie just because of like the inversion stuff and how you kind of go through the whole story one way and then see it from a different perspective, like from the second half onward.
Right. While we're not actively talking about what movies we're going to review, I will drop those posters for the sake of not having them up the whole time. But um, you know, we'll bring them back up when people ask and we want to talk about what we're specifically doing. Just letting you know. I do agree that there was the technical aspect of this film is on par for me as far as the plot technicalities, because there's the technical specs of movies, and then there's the world that the director creates and the technical aspects within that world. And so, of course, he's none of this is real, so he's got to make it up. And of course, we as viewers are very critical of that. And I came to a realization watching this film today, and I want to share it with you if I could, Fraga.
What's that?
So most people don't like there are truly cynical people that just kind of seem to hate everything, and that's fine, whatever, they're cynical. But then there are people that
Right.
I think like you and I, that when we do gripe about a film, which I don't think you gripe nearly as hard as I do, when we do gripe about films, it's more that the directors and the producers set up a world and then they start breaking rules within the world that they've set. It's not
Yeah.
that you can't go and do fantastic stuff or fantasy stuff, but don't set up an expectation for how things are supposed to work and then flip it on its head. That frustrates a lot of people. And so that's where I think a lot of the nitpicking comes from, especially with Nolan films or the more complex films where people start to pick them apart.
Definitely. But I also feel like Nolan, even well, I mean, especially with this movie, The Prestige, he likes to do like magic trick filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if there's not great big twists, there's always some kind of reveal that's like a neat little aha. And then that's like your, I guess, carrot for like following the plots all along. And you can still get the end of a Nolan film and have a good time watching all the stuff blow up in between or like hearing all the fun dialogue. But like he leaves little things behind for people that are like trying to pay attention or for people that want to go back and see if they missed something the first time they've seen it.
I agree. I agree. What I got the most out of this one from his previous films, and there was definitely some Inception feels and things like that, but I think I felt, especially towards the middle and end of the film, a much more Memento style feel. And I think this was almost his way of coming back and reshooting that film with a different story.
See that?
You know what I mean? And yeah,
Yeah.
there are differences, but I mean he literally got to do the same kind of story this time, but in a wholly unique way. And I have to say that I do think the message, and I'm not going to tell people the message because I don't want to spoil the like big reveal. Um,
Right.
but I do think that the message is a really apt message for today. I think if you care about the world in any way, shape, or form, the movie might hit you in the feels in that way. So definitely check it out for that reason. If you're a person that likes to get the feels when they're watching movies. Um, wow, am I really only showing up out of one? Oh, I'm running an audio problem again. That's, of course, going to
Uh-oh.
be the case. It's okay. Let me see if I can change it while we're talking. Go ahead and keep telling me what you think about Tenet. And again, we are talking about Tenet. There may be potential spoilers. Please be aware. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead.
Right. I'm gonna do my best to avoid the spoilers, but also that's just because, like, I don't know. The first time I watched the movie, I honestly, like, even before we had the idea to review movies and talk about movies, I was like, how the hell would you even discuss this thing? Because, like, if you were to sit down and tell someone the synopsis of the movie, I feel like you get really confused right around the time they go back to that airport hangar, and then you start describing the events from there. Because, like, it's literally one of those things that, like, even though movies are a linear entertainment experience, I feel like you don't get the full impact and the full like whoa from Tenet until you see it happen. Like you can describe all the cool stuff that happens inside Inception, and then you just tell people that like, oh, that was a dream inside a dream, and that's why it's interesting. You said that you got a Memento vibe from like this is him reaching back to that. I feel like this was his more let's make a less complicated Inception heist, but like instead of falling on like the crutch of this is just a dream and anything that happens here is only going to compromise the other layer of the dream. He was like, let's just cut two layers out and make a straightforward story that has stakes.
Weird. I didn't get that impression. To me, I didn't get much. Of course, I got the feel from Inception because he does like to, I mean, it's Nolan. I mean, most directors find their feel. If you watch a Tim Burton movie, most of the time you're going to know you're in a Tim Burton movie. But
They also have a signature, and like I feel like his is like ensemble casts and sexy set piece designs with the ridiculous, you know, things like running through that whole um, vault area with the oxygen depriving thing and all that. Like
oh, he loves
Nolan's
that
always
stuff.
got this thing where he's like, I'm gonna drop a van off a bridge in slow mo, or I'm gonna flip a freaking Mack truck, or I'm gonna drop a plane out of the sky.
Oh, I loved
And
how,
Nolan really
yeah.
does stuff like that.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna wreck a plane into an airplane hangar," and yeah, you could tell it was real because Nolan doesn't mess around. It's definitely real. But
Yeah.
I agree. One of his signatures, though, is complex plot. If it's not a complex
Right.
plot, he doesn't. He's not satisfied, and that's been true since his black and white film before Memento. He thrives on it, and I think some people think that there's a pretension to his style of filmmaking and the way that he likes to drive these plots. And I have to say, when I was watching Tenet, I started to feel that way in the beginning. I'm like, we're going to use the name protagonist. Oh, okay. What's really hilarious is I just drew a character 4 months ago, not knowing about Tenet, called Paul Protagonist for the same freaking reasons. And then I just felt stupid by thinking of that and went, okay, yeah, he's just doing what I did, and I did what he did. So maybe I should shut up about my own stuff. But anyway, I started to like it and I started to see the point. But I will say, honestly and truthfully, I don't think that the protagonist is the protagonist.
I don't either. And I feel well so for me too. All right, who did you like the most out of Inception when you watched it?
Who was my character in Inception? Who did I like the most?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
tough one. I actually don't like the Leo character because he's a terrible human, but um,
Right.
that's beside the point. As far as Jogo Levy's character was solid and trying to keep the moral compass in the right place most of the film, but Ellen Page was pretty dope.
Okay, yeah, because for me it's like it's a mix between Ellen Page and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and then the dude that like did the van work and got left behind on like the second level. I thought those guys were like really cool. I thought Tom Hardy was fun and all that, but like his character in this movie, I don't know if you realize that or not. It was Aaron Taylor, the dude who played Kick-Ass.
Yeah, I caught that.
Yeah,
I didn't catch
like
it
he
for the
was
first half
totally
of the
the
film because it was in
yeah.
the especially when they're in the vault, it's dark, and then when they're doing the first inversion, it's really dark on that side of the glass, and yeah, yeah.
Well, that and they let him use his like actual accent, but he like hammed it up a lot. So
Well, and he was shaved head and had a beard, and yeah,
Mhm.
I was gonna mention that because I thought that was interesting. I always forget his name, but yeah, Kick Ass, and he played Quicksilver, and the dude, Godzilla, dude's been in everything, and doing well. Like I think it's pretty. He's doing a good job. As far
Yeah, I
as
think that was like a fun little addition because like I don't think I remember seeing him in any of the trailers either. So
right,
that was like the first time in a while I went to a movie and I was like, oh, this guy's here.
Pattinson blew me away. I gotta admit,
Oh yeah.
he brought it to a level that most people don't understand, and anybody who thinks they understand Robert Pattinson hasn't watched a movie since Twilight.
How many Robert Pattinson films have you seen since Twilight, or have you even seen Twilight?
Oh, I've seen all the Twilight films. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
I'm married.
What of his did you see last though?
um, which did I see of his that were last? Let's see. I can't remember. And honestly, I don't
Because
seek his
like
movies out, but I do think he's more diverse than people give him credit. So
for sure. And you can like if you look at his portfolio since Twilight, he literally seems like him and Radcliffe did that. I'm gonna take these weird ass like artsy fartsy and just fun projects
uh-huh.
that allow me to stretch my legs and get out of my comfort zone.
Right.
Because the last Pattinson thing I seen in theaters was The Lighthouse, and ooh, buddy, we're gonna be doing that one at some point because it's definitely worth a critique or two.
Willem Dafoe is
And
amazing, so you don't have to
oh,
pull, you don't have to twist my arm on that one.
yeah, and like I hope you're into Greek tragedies because that's literally just like live action Greek tragedy with some weird cryptic stuff going on. And then the one I seen most recently, but came before that one was Good Time, I believe it was. And that movie is a trip in its own. Like he plays a scumbag, and he's got like a brother that's on the spectrum, and they like try to stick places up so they can get out of their crummy neighborhood. And it's just
Interesting.
like watching that movie's uncomfortable, but it's enjoyable because you're like, wow, I remember this guy being like a really stale vampire weirdo, like Mormon guy, and a dead dude from Harry Potter. Spoilers, sorry. Um, and like that was it, because like those are the last things I remember seeing him in when I was in high school.
Yeah, that was
You
a
know,
big spoiler you just threw for anybody who hasn't seen Harry Potter, but yeah, I doubt that the.
they'll get over it. That one's been a while.
I know. I think on that note, since we're talking about movies and we're going to literally just go all over the place, I think when it comes to spoilers, that there is no time limit because it's unfair to expect everyone to hit the same standard of viewing. Life happens. People have children. People have interests. Maybe you're not in the mood for that movie that week. Everybody else was. Things like that. What do you
For
think?
sure. And I agree with you. But also, I feel like throwing that out there, if you haven't seen that movie, like I'm probably saving you 2 hours and or limiting your expectations now that you know something's coming.
That's
But
true.
yeah, I'll be a little bit more careful with the.
No, no, you're good. You're
But
totally
that's what
good.
I'm saying. Like the last thing I remember him being in was like stuff when I was in high school, and then he just fell off my radar. I knew he did that. There's another movie he did shortly after Harry Potter's, which I literally can't mention because the ending is a spoiler. But that was like a rom. No, it was like a dramatic romance movie.
Hmm.
That was really weird too. It just feels like he's been hitting. He's either been going for like the super serious or the super abstract, so he can just do more. And I think it's really funny that he wound up becoming or will be the new Batman
Interesting. Yeah, no, I'm not
because like
sure about Batman. We're gonna have to see. Um, we're gonna have to see.
well this movie I got total Bruce Wayne vibes from him. Like he just seemed very suave in his whole every time he's wearing a suit and like talking his mouth off and not doing all actiony stuff. Like I was I do that from time to time when there's some sort of movie that's got like a fast talking dude in a suit. I want like I somehow just think like would that be a good Bruce Wayne?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's going to be Batman, I was like, I really hope they lean into the whole non-Cape Crusader part because he's totally got the charisma down for being like a fast-talking dude in a suit that can negotiate his way around like a business table or whatever.
You know what I wished we would have gotten with Batman versus Superman was a lot more Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne, Clark Bruce talk,
Oh,
and we didn't get any of that.
right.
That's the relationship that makes their relationship shine because it's great to see them in costume and doing their thing, but the fact that they know each other and can chat regularly is also great. So okay. So Tenet.
Okay. So the tangent I got off on, yeah. The reason I brought that up is because I found Pattinson's character more interesting than Protagonist, but I think Protagonist is my favorite lead character in a Nolan movie because he just moves the story along in such a comfortable pace. And the fact that his name was just Protagonist felt comfortable to me for some reason. I don't know what that's all about.
because you were introduced to him real quick and in a lightning, like everything that's going on in the beginning, you're like, whoa, this is very regimented. The whole movie feels regimented.
Right. But I'm just saying,
I don't know. Woo.
like as far as characters go, like I thought it's funny that like protagonist was not my favorite. I really liked Pattinson. Oh, why am I blanking on his name right now in the movie? I don't think it's Liam. Anyway,
Neil.
but yeah, I thought like Neil. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, I think he came in and stole the show. But he also was not like front and center 24/7, which I really appreciated too.
Right. I agree. To me, he was there as much as he needed to be, but honestly, when he wasn't, I was like, "What's Neil doing?" I always wanted to know
Right.
what was Neil doing. I want to know. And here's the thing. We'll have to I'll have to show you this. And this is a little braggadocious, but whatever. I consider myself a heavy duty movie buff, and I know that I can predict movies a lot of times. And I can tell you right now, there was nothing in this movie I couldn't predict, and I predicted it well ahead. And I was like, "Oh, this is that," and "Oh, this is who," and blah blah blah. To myself, there was of course nobody there for me to verify it with, but my wife will tell you.
Right.
I've done this a lot of times, and once you know the tropes, it's almost impossible not to see them coming.
For sure. Okay, so can we get into minor spoiler territories?
Sure. Just
or
let everybody know.
Talk about hypotheticals that might lead into spoilers.
Sure, but just make sure we try to be polite and let everybody know, and I have no problem with it.
Okay. Because I don't want to directly go into spoilers, but I do want to mention like the first time I watched this movie, I watched it by myself, and the second time I watched it with my wife. And it was so funny to me because she's usually really good at figuring out what's coming next with no context, and she doesn't even know the tropes that well. She just like kind of gets in her head. And the whole time we fired up Tenet, we thought that the dude that saved protagonist at the beginning was going to be protagonist. And then she immediately thought, once they did the whole first time reverse thing, that Neil was going to be a bad guy. She was just waiting for that reveal that Neil was going to be just like the dude pulling the strings from behind the scenes or something.
Now, I have to admit, I can see where she's coming from on that. And I did get, but I got that vibe from everybody, even protagonist. I think that's the way the film is designed. Like you're supposed to feel like, wait, who do I trust? And he did a good job. And I mean, Nolan, in making us really not 100% know who to trust. And at one point in the movie, I was literally yelling at the screen, like, how do you trust him? So, yeah, I agree that they did a good job of making it really difficult to nail that half of it down. So, yeah.
Well, then too, like, I feel like as soon as they get to like the second operation that goes sort of pear-shaped or whatever, like you sort of get the idea that like this Neil guy knows way more than he's letting on. And I think that's why she got the whole this guy's totally bad, like he's way too in the know and just like calm about everything, to not just be like a dude that got the call that like knew a friend of a friend or whatever. But I had the opposite effect where I was like, this guy is totally in on it, and like,
Well,
I'm sure he's, because as soon as time travel became a thing, and like I knew it was a thing because of the reverse bullet, whatever. But when we actually seen it go back, I was like, I'll bet we'll see something about Neil doing yay or nay. Like he would pop up at the opera, or this, that, or the other, and like it would. I thought we were gonna have like in video games when it switches characters, and I'm glad they didn't do that. But I was really expecting it to happen. I thought it was gonna be one of those things where like protagonist movie ends and then Neil pops up for the end or something.
Ugh. No good. Glad it didn't happen that way.
I would have been interested to see it, but like I was totally waiting for Neil to like get a whole 20 minutes to himself or something, like without protagonist being around.
No.
Especially at the end.
No, because in itself, on its face, that would ruin Neil's story. And what's so wonderful about Neil's story is that we don't know Neil's story.
Yeah, I know his whole ambiguity thing is like my favorite part about him.
I have never been so satisfied with knowing so little about a character.
Right.
Honestly. And that's weird because normally I'd be like, where's the sequel? But if they made a sequel to this movie, it would ruin it.
Honestly, I want to see a sequel, but like with most films that I feel like should get sequels, I want to see it from a different angle. I want to know more about the
Mhm.
people that were just letting Tenet out there and had the whole hand thing pop up and whatnot. I want some things explained, but some things left a mystery.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but
Because the whole. Mhm.
oh, I think the mystery in itself is the point. Okay, so let's go back to
Right.
Inception. Okay, for anybody that's seen Inception, I'm not going to spoil the film, but there is a moment in the very, very, very last second of the film where the protagonist
Right.
has done something, and then they use the device that tells them whether they're still dreaming or not. And what I love about Nolan is that film ends on the note of you don't know,
Right.
and you'll never know. It's much like the Pulp Fiction gold box. It's much like, little things they've put into movies over and over again. Because the point isn't that it is or isn't real. The point is the journey. And I think that Nolan, being a good filmmaker, knows that, and knows that the journey, when you get to the end of Tenet, you you don't need to fill in those blanks, because if you do, it's missing the point. Let me put it this way. Old horror movies used to rely on not seeing the bad guy or the antagonist at all in order to scare you.
Right.
And current movies have gone out of their way to make sure that you see the or the antagonist all the time, and the fear drops because of it. That lack of
Yeah, they'll put it in the trailer too.
right, but that lack of antagonist in those older horror movies is what made it great. In this case, that lack of protagonist story is what makes it great.
Agreed. But I want to see. And like I said, it doesn't have to be like a Tenet 2 or a sequel of Tenet. I want to know what's going on in that future where they invert the stuff and send it back.
You have
Like
enough
that's what I
information.
want to.
You have that information. They told you all of it. You need more than that?
Well, I just want to see what that future looks like because they don't ever say like how far away it is. We just learn something about the scientist that makes the inverted technology, and then we know that it's coming from a certain thing. It's like there's a time limit on when they can resolve the problem in the movie. And I'm trying to be vague for spoilers' sake and all
Good,
that,
good,
but
good.
like I want to see what that future looks like.
I agree. Man, my pizza pan will not stay put. I'm trying to eat pizza
Oof.
and do this at the same time because I'm a dork. Okay. Sorry, let me come back on screen here.
But here's my thing too. I don't need a whole ass sequel to, and I wish Christopher Nolan would do more short movies. Cause like also with The Dark Knight, I wanted more Cillian Killian Murphy as Scarecrow. And I would have been totally cool with like little 10-minute videos of like whatever he did after he got out of Gotham jail or
Didn't
whatever.
didn't you watch the Gotham Knight?
The Gotham Knight. I don't think I did.
DC animated movie came out at the same time as between Batman Begins and Dark Knight. It actually goes into why some of
Oh,
the
that's
police officers.
tied into
100%.
interesting. I did not know that. But I've always wanted more out of like Nolan's universes without Nolan actually being the guy that needs to spearhead and front it. Because I feel like Nolan makes really good movies, and I feel like they can be expanded upon without going into full blown sequel, $10 movie ticket, 2 hour runtime, you know, features.
Haven't you gotten the impression that all of his movies take place in the same universe?
I have, but I've never been able to like thread them together.
Well, the tech is all the
But
same.
I feel like that's more just his signature.
Mm, look at the tech. Look at the way he talks about tech, even in the Batman movies.
Hmm.
Think about it. Just because Batman exists and Ra's al Ghul exists doesn't mean there aren't Russian oligarchs. I mean, you know.
Sure, I feel like that runs into the whole Tarantino problem though,
What do you mean?
where like people try to tie all of his movies together. And I feel like to an extent there are lots of Easter eggs and connections, but I don't think you could just string them all together and say like they're a part of a Tarantino verse. You know what I mean?
Well, fair. But again,
And I feel like that cheapens it for me for some reason.
we are crossing over to that threshold, though, like you said, of is it going to be style or is it a universe? And I think that's what Kevin Feige did with the MCU, is he actually realized that style and universe kind of go hand in hand. So he made it happen. So that's my opinion.
Well, the nice thing with that too is they also have it's like Feige may be the guy that's like building up the blueprints and the backbone and all that, but there's a lot of people that shoulder a lot of weight, like James Gunn, the Guardian stuff, and Jon Favreau and the early Iron Man things, and the Russo brothers. That's the other I couldn't think of, and they're run with Captain America and then eventually the Avengers films.
I did not think they could do what they did with first Avenger and then go all the way to Endgame. I thought they wouldn't be able to pull it off.
I thought they were going to end after the first Avengers.
You mean after the Joss Whedon Avengers in 2012?
Yeah, I mean, like I figured there'd be sequels, but I thought like that was just okay, we did it, guys, we got them all together, and like there wasn't going to be this whole push to get 22 films out. I thought like a solid 5 or a soft 6 was like their goal, and they're like, this is cool, we've made bucket loads of money. I didn't know they were going to go for bathtubs full or swimming pools full or
it's Disney.
Well, see, that's the thing too. I don't think Disney owned them at that point, and so once we got to Civil War and then the talks were happening, yeah. I was like, oh, this is going to be the thing that my kids are going to go see. They're like, oh, Dad, did you go see Avengers 12? Like, no, I kind of fell out after Cap came back for the 3rd time.
And that's what the comic books are like.
Right.
Really, you go talk to grandparents and they understand who Captain America is and what he did. But I can tell you that I knew they would go there because, yes, Disney did purchase, as far as I know, Marvel before Iron Man.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We can look it up.
Because I remember the sale happening. That was the whole Spider-Man issue. And I think Paramount still had a lot of the rights and Universal had a lot of the rights. And that's why they had problems getting Hulk involved. And so I thought Disney didn't own it until like they got done with Avengers 1.
Nope. Let me double check. Pardon my pizza eating in all of the world. Let's take a look here. When
right. But also, okay, to get back to Tenet for a little bit,
Sure.
I really enjoyed the movie. I would highly recommend anyone see it. And I feel like if it's still one of those things showing when theaters finally open up, I think I'll try to go sit down and watch it on the big screen and see if I get something new out of it,
That's fair. 2009, so we were both wrong-ish. I was wrong, but it was not as late as you thought either. So yeah, kind of both. 2009, right after the Iron Man.
Oh yeah, movie. So it was like a year before, right?
Yeah, so they basically made 2 movies.
So they got like,
and they were in the middle of Iron Man 2 when the purchase was made.
Oh,
is what I figured.
Son of a gun.
So, so Tenet. Okay, it's really hard to. I want to. Okay, we've talked a lot of positive about it, but for a movie review, there's always got to be, because no movie's perfect. There's the other side. There's the flip side, and I found myself making some mental notes throughout the film about how maybe there could be some pretty glaring errors with the time inversion, because certain things didn't make sense, although he tried to package it with some of the, again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers. He tried to package it really nicely with some of the dialogue between Neil and the protagonist by talking about fate.
Right.
And, that's great and all, but it kind of bothered me. Because there were moments where I was like, wait, how is he not choosing to hit? He's already done this, but he hasn't because it's in the future.
So okay, we're going to have to just like get into this. And I had these problems too. And it felt better on a second viewing.
I figured.
Where having seen all the cards, I was like, I'm more apt to forgive this. Because also too, like I love dumb, like, okay, ever since Back to the Future, I love dumb time travel shit. And it leaves a lot of loopholes and a lot of questions. But I feel like the more you watch a time travel movie or a movie with time travel elements, you get, I don't know if it's like less harsh about it, but like in order to see the things happen, depending on if you believe like the the Einstein uncertainty principle or like the grandfather paradox and all that, you start to just let things slide if that's your bread and butter. So like if time travel movies bother you, Tenet is probably going to be a hard sell. You may enjoy the movie as a whole, but you're definitely going to find all those elements kind of fishy.
You're gonna hate it.
But if like time travel, if time travel's your jam, you're going to be like, woof, that was an adventure.
Yeah, if you're willing to, if you like, okay, I'm gonna kind of follow along with what you just said. If you can tolerate Nolan, and I say tolerate because some people are on the fence. If you can tolerate Nolan,
Yeah, some people hate him and JJ and like all the big people because they just don't get their thing.
well, because they're
They want like the
they're not either the so it's the people that complain about that are usually the ones that are like Hollywood sucks and they're not real filmmakers, and it's like, well, no, if you take a picture with a camera you may not be Ansel Adams but you're still a photographer, so shut up. And then just because they're working for a studio doesn't mean that they don't have some creative license in their work. The idea that they're literally told, like, an authoritarian leader that they can't do X, Y, and Z or write a script a certain way. There's some of that in studio work, no doubt. Like, it's going to be there, but it's not there for people like Nolan. Nolan's proven himself. He gets to make whatever he wants. He produces his own films. So the idea that Nolan is being, held up by WB or something is kind of ridiculous, I think.
well, yeah, and then like also like films like Batman and Tenet and Inception, those are the films that make the money that make the smaller films happen.
Right.
But I feel like at some point you have to respect those films because like they're the ones that put ass in seats and money in the box office.
Right.
And get your little artsy fartsy film or like your romantic comedy ensemble or whatever done.
Well, and not only that, but everybody thinks everybody can be Kevin Smith. Not everybody can be Kevin Smith. Not everybody can max their credit cards and make a film and be successful at it. Because plenty of people have made films. And
even Kevin Smith wasn't like Kevin Smith that we know now. Kevin Smith has evolved throughout the years, but like he was garbage in the beginning.
We'll discuss that later. I have a pretty soft spot in my heart for Kevin Smith. So,
yeah, we'll probably need a whole episode on that, and like at least a couple of films to talk over.
Agreed. But again, I think we could literally take the Kevin Smith, at least the Jersey Chronicles portion of his career, and watch them as a series because they are a series. They're all in the same universe. So you watch everything from Clerks to Clerks 2, and then you stop because after that, he goes into like Red State and some of his more modern films and Cop Out, which was
his more abstract. Let's make a horror movie about a guy that gets turned into a walrus just because everyone said we couldn't do it.
Right. Okay, that movie freaked me out, by the way, and I can't watch it because it's so.
But that was literally like a
disturbing.
dare movie. That was like someone told him you can't do that, and he's like, watch me, and then he did.
Oh man, like I've seen it once, and I well made, but dude, that's effed up.
Don't remember much of it, sadly. I know I've watched it. It didn't stick with me like Red State stuck with me. I think Red State hit me at the right time, and I was just like, whoa.
Red State is Kevin Smith's either first or second best film. And to me, it's literally Red State and Zack and Miri.
Interesting. What's your opinion on Dogma, then?
Dogma's good. I think all of his movies are good. Okay. But if you watch Dogma enough times like I have, you start to understand that it's the same movie as Chasing Amy and Mallrats. It's just from a different bend.
Everything in that era.
Right. It's just from a different bend. And that's great. And I love the whole universe. Like I said, I will defend Kevin Smith. I love his original films. It's kind of hard now to go back and watch like Clerks 2 especially. There's some pretty like, really guys? Really? It's kind of like Fanboys is one of my all-time favorite ridiculous comedies, but they say some shit in there that maybe we shouldn't be running around saying anymore, and so it's uncomfortable sometimes to watch. But whatever. That's the whole point.
Sign of the times, though.
Agreed, it is. But it's an uncomfortable time. So
for sure.
Okay, so
not to be emulated, but just to be understood.
Right. So we've talked for 40 minutes about Tenet. Is there any more you'd like to say tonight about it? Because I believe that Tenet should get a review upon second viewing, for in 6 months or whatever it may be. I'll watch it.
I still wanted to get into that spoilery stuff though.
Okay, I thought you hadn't. I thought so. How about we spend another 5 or maybe 10
you said
minutes?
You had problems with it, and
you want to talk about it.
Okay,
go ahead.
No, you were pretty vague about it, but like I have a general idea because I know there were parts I had problems with going through it the first time too.
Okay.
And I feel like it's your Neo Ex Machina stuff.
My Neo Ex Machina stuff, I kind of like the way you said that. Uh,
Yeah.
I just realized something. Give me a second. Go ahead and say what you were going to say, but I want to check something because I think, oh,
Just that
wow.
when you go through it for the second time, um, and then you see you already know what everyone's motivations are and you know how it's going to end, I feel like you pick up a whole new nuance that you didn't get the first time. The first time you go through it, it's a real confusing, fun roller coaster, but the second time you go through it, it's almost like you have like a small like introduction to engineering class and you know how like the whips and turns and ups and downs are going to work, so it feels a little bit more enjoyable because like on top of knowing how things are going to end, you start picking up stuff you might have missed the first time
Oh, I agree.
just knowing
I
what's
agree.
going to happen.
That's why I brought the Matrix up because it had the same thing. The first time you watched the Matrix, if you hadn't had it spoiled for you, and if you were around in '99 as an adult, because watching it now, because it's the tropes from it have been saturated throughout the market, it's not as shocking to a viewer now, 20 years later. They'd probably go, "Oh, that's kind of cute," but they
Right.
wouldn't be as freaked out by it because tech
That's
is
novel.
huge,
I've
right?
seen that somewhere else.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, I saw that on Rick and Morty. Well, yeah, of course. Where did Rick and Morty get it? So, if you go back to '99, watching The Matrix, then it was just mind blowing. Most people, especially even critics, were like, "What is this?" And then, of course, the sequels changed people's minds on that, and then you can get into all that. But
You know what's hilarious? I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She had just watched the Die Hard movie for the first time.
the
And
original,
she was like, that was okay, but like, I don't know, it felt like a lot less intense than like White House Down, which was that Channing Tatum, Jamie Foxx movie, which is basically Die Hard in the White House.
I'm
And I
hiding.
was like, see, that's the problem when you're like in your 20s to 30s and you watch these newer films and you go back to watch something old, you're gonna see something that's been emulated for the last 3 decades. And like it's probably gonna look a lot more flashier and a lot more high stakes and this, that, and the other, rather than just being like a big building full of some corporate suits versus like trying to save the president or whatever. And I feel like it's so funny when people go back and watch these things and don't realize like, yeah, this was source material. This is what everyone pulled from. Like that's why it doesn't look so polished or crazy or bombastic.
I agree, and it's funny because I was a child of the '80s and '90s, which means that anything not made from Star Wars on didn't matter. If it wasn't made, I guess Jaws was like one of those exceptions, or maybe Close Encounters. But even those, I was like,
Right.
those are old. Those aren't Star Wars. And once I hit the teenage years, 14, 15, 16 years old, I started going, oh, wow, there's far more to film than just what came before or came after my birth. You know, lots of film came before my
Right.
birth, and people are like, yeah, I only watch movies since I was born. And I'm like, how old are you? 20? Yeah, I'm 20. So you've watched less than a sixth of the percent of movies possible because they were movies made since 1900, and you've literally just avoided all of those because they're, quote, too old. So I get really like thrown off by that because there are so many good movies at no matter what era. If they're well made, and they should stand the test of time.
Well, what sucks too is like I was mentioning with the Die Hard White House Down thing, like you can totally find the diet or knockoff or generic version of that old classic that doesn't do it quite as well, but if like that's all you know, it looks good enough. And
Right.
there's just so many movies that come out every year that like even if you didn't mean to, you could get stuck watching all the stuff that's come out since you were born and still probably not have enough time to go back and review the classics. So like if you just don't have access to that, or your
Sure.
friend group doesn't like it, or you don't know where to go, like it'd be harder to watch some older stuff that's objectively better.
Agreed. Agreed. We just had somebody pop into chat, and I want to say hi. Hi, just Jesse. How are you doing? Thanks for stopping by and saying
Hey there,
hello.
Jesse.
And we are kind of towards the end of our review of the movie Tenant. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want it spoiled, please tell us now, and we can actually refrain from doing any spoilers as we continue to talk about it. But Ed and I have kind of just been going off about Ed, the Fry Guy. Sorry, that's that guy right over there. Anyway, um, he sits on the counter and talks to me while we talk about movies, so it's pretty fun. Um, so you agree? Well, now I had what you were saying, and now I've lost it. What were you saying?
It's really easy to get caught up watching new movies instead of old ones if you don't have access to them or know where to look, just because there's been so much like filtered down emulation of and redoing of things,
I
you
agree.
know.
I agree. And not only that, although nowadays it's a little easier. If you go on like HBO Max, you can get a ton of classics because they connected Turner Classic Movies, because Turner Broadcasting, HBO. So you can watch Citizen Kane, you can watch Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, you can go through a whole smattering of class and some good classic horror. Like they've got a lot of everything on there. Um, but before that kind of stuff hit, yeah, it was almost impossible. You'd have to have like a library card just to get the classics.
Yeah, and even then it could take forever. Or you might even know where to look too, because you start asking people like, "Hey, what do you recommend?" And if you only get the people that help you that are like your age or younger,
Right,
they might not know.
right. Let me put the where is that? Where is that darn thing? Okay, so these are the movies that we will be reviewing tonight. As I just talked about, Ed and I have been talking about Tenet, and we're off on a little tangent, but there are going to be many tangents. So we should actually probably get like a sound effect and a horn that says "tangent time" or something like that. I don't know. But we are also
It's
going to.
done, aren't we? Right? You recommend the movie, yeah.
I do. I do recommend the movie. If you have not seen Tenet, please do watch it. Even if you're cynical, even if you don't like time travel, even if you don't like Nolan, I still think, minus all those things, it's a good film, regardless of those things. So, what do you think, Ed?
Absolutely.
You agree with that?
I would agree 100%. And I would say, like, I would watch it mostly also because, like, it's one of the big ones that came out last year. And it's one of those ones that, like, I think about it more like a 2020 movie than a 2019 movie, because it was supposed to come out in 2019, but I
Right.
think it got pushed because of, um, well, coronavirus for one, but also the closing of theaters, and then it got pushed for on demand earlier. And like,
Well, some of
it's
that was
it's like it's
Nolan.
sad. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that
I
was
just feel
his
like it's
doing.
it's one of those ones you want to experience because I don't know, it might be a little early to say, but it might become like a timeless movie because I was thinking about this earlier too. I don't think I could place the time that it's set in. There's a lot of weirder, older tech in it,
I like
and like
that.
they don't really give you a date and time that when things are going to happen, other than I think one part of the film is like set to a physical date and time.
That the time travel movie is timeless. I think that's fantastic, Ed. That's you
Yeah,
you couldn't have said that better. But I agree. They do give dates, but the dates are month, day, no year. They do not
yeah.
talk about years. They don't talk about much in that film.
So
That's what's
yeah,
really wild about it. Like they don't. They're like, here's some information as you go, and you'll pick it up. And you're like, oh, I
yeah.
will. I will pick it up.
It's vague and in depth in certain parts, which
Right.
is so like I don't know.
Like I said,
It's so one of those things that you got to experience, and I think whether you like it or not, it's worth giving a see.
agreed. Even if you hate it, you should watch it. It's one of those films that I would normally be like, even if you hate everything Nolan's ever made, just watch this one. You can skip all the rest. Just watch
Right.
this one, only just to see if you come out the other end going, like the rest of us. So that's that. Do you feel comfortable moving to another movie?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think since they're set up this way on the screen, I have them listed as you saw as Tenet, Evil Dead, and True Romance. That we will go ahead and talk about Evil Dead next. So again,
Here's the perfect thing.
spoilers ahead. We will be
I
talking
don't
about
have
Evil
it
Dead.
set up to see what this looks like. So for me, it feels like I'm being like kidnapped and like someone's like, you got to review these movies or else you're not getting out of here. And so I have to rely on like, you're my co-pilot to get me through this.
I love it. I love it. No, and it's funny because from my perspective and from the viewer's perspective, you're sitting on the counter. You're not animated, but that's fine. You're just sitting on the counter, and I keep staring at you. That's what it looks
There we
like.
go. It's perfect
So
balance.
it is, and you're kind of looking away from me in shame, like, why are you making me review these movies? Anywho, so we will move on to Evil Dead, and we are going to review it. Yes, it was released in 1981. Yes, it is one of Sam Raimi's earliest films. Not his earliest, though, as most people don't know. And Bruce Campbell, gore fest. Yeah, so that'll be the next movie we review. I am going to, of course, drop the movies now so that they're not there. Boom. And we're going to talk about Evil Dead. I'm going to take the start on this one, Ed, since you did Tenet. Um,
Sounds good.
Evil Dead is a long series, and maybe this is a good time to talk about how we're going to do this. So we're actually going to review movies a few different ways. We're going to talk about one new movie every week. We're going to talk about a series of films, so whatever one we're on in those series, and then a third classic film. Classic meaning anything not released probably in the last 2 or 3. And I know that's not the definition of classic, but it'll allow us to kind of go back to movies that you guys didn't get to hear us review. And we want everybody to hear us review everything we think you should hear us review. So that's the plan. So right now, Tenet was the new movie for this week. Evil Dead is our series film, which means next week you can look forward to Evil Dead 2. And then True Romance is our classic film for this week. And of course, classic will mean anything from silent films to instant classics, if you will. And we'll go from there. So, Evil Dead, 1981, Sam Raimi. This movie still to this day creeps me out. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. It's mostly the audio. It's not the visuals, because the visuals have gotten kind of bad over the years, especially looking back. They're kind of hokey, and you can definitely check and see some of those big errors they made, like the hose for the, that's coming out of the mouth for the blood or the puke. You could see the errors, but he was a new filmmaker. They all were new filmmakers, and they did a really good job. But it's the way that everybody's talking, and the way Linda goes to and from dead to alive, and the "I'll swallow your soul." That stuff is what still to this day sticks with me. And it's definitely a movie that I think has affected the way horror has been made over the years. It's a huge influence to a lot of people. The Cabin in the Woods undoubtedly got a lot of its concepts from Evil Dead. But that's my first and initial take on it. How about you, Fry Guy?
Yeah, I agree. It's so funny too because I forgot. So I forgot that like the second one kind of just like it's sort of like a soft reboot of the story. It's like the basically the same thing again, except Ash is the only one that's there from the first one.
Right.
And rewatching it again, like I forgot that this was an independent horror film, and that's what it said on the tag too. And it's so funny because like when they're acting outside of the spoops,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's not campy and cringy, but you can tell this is like very small scale, like dude and his friends making a film in the cabin in the woods.
But they did want to
But
scare
like
the
when
shit
it
out of you.
gets to yeah, and when it gets to the effects and stuff, I was like, man, there's stuff people are still trying to do based on this movie right here.
Right.
And so it's weird that like some of the jump scares and some of the jump cuts and like the special effects, like they're still trying to ape that stuff today. And I feel like the fact that it was on such a small budget, I could not imagine a film being made like this today. Not in the sense that like people aren't doing stuff like that or people aren't trying or people don't make movies with their friends, but like there's a nice subtleness to it in the music and the sound mixing. And I feel like that adds to the experience, even though like undoubtedly he probably did it better in the second than the first one just because he had more budget and more talent and all that and more time probably.
Oh, I mean, they had
But I think like
Greg Nicotero and Tom Savini on the second film. Like, they had some serious, what is considered now like the mainstay of horror graphics and special effects to this day. Those guys are the top of the class.
which is
So
why I think like they did such a good effort. Like I wouldn't say it's like a flawless project the first one, but I'd say that's a solid
no,
B if you were like grading an assignment or something, just because like
that's a
I think
solid
it's
B
it's
film.
it's weaker when we don't.
Sorry,
I didn't even think about that. It's funny.
no, that's great.
Um, yeah, like once you get to the horror, I feel like you're in your seat and ready for the ride because like
I agree.
it was surprising how well and solid that movie was.
I agree, and I don't want to knock the special effects because of when they were, but I do want to note that I think the reason you don't see films like that made today is that you have high quality imaging today. You have HD graphics and 4K graphics on all the phones and all the things people are filming on, which means that the higher end cameras are even better, which means you can pick up every zit and every bad makeup shot ever made in mankind's history This is why when you watch Back to the Future on HD or Blu-ray, you can tell that Doc Brown is wearing a really ridiculous face mask to make him look older because Chris wasn't that old then. They made him look older than he is. He
Right.
looks more like Doc Brown now than he would then. Um, so that's the problem. So you go back, if you were to enhance Evil Dead to the point where you could see everything, it becomes, you're just like, ooh, that's bad. That's really, not to mention the filter
Mm-hmm.
problems, and because they were using stuff that was never meant to work with high def. They didn't even know it was going to be a thing. So I agree that the special effects for their time were amazing, but it's because they're sitting in a 480p standard def nightmare that they work.
For sure. And like I also feel like too that the structure was nice enough. I feel like too many shows and movies nowadays, they want to solve the mystery. And like Evil Dead, they go to a cabin, they stumble across some notes, the notes summon a thing, and then they have to endure the rest of the night. That's a good enough setup for a movie. I cannot stand when I'm watching something now and we have to learn about where it's